What if the daughter of a billionaire had never died in a car crash, but had been locked away, silenced by the very men her father trusted? And what if the only person brave enough to uncover the truth was a homeless nurse with nothing left to lose? This isn't just a story of wealth, lies, and betrayal. It's about how one woman risked everything to bring another back from the shadows. Stay with this video because by the end, you'll witness a rescue no one saw coming, and a truth so shocking it could destroy everything. Why would a billionaire suddenly offer shelter to a homeless woman he's never met? Unless she holds a secret he's trying to bury. The summer heat clung to Boston like a wet sheet, suffocating and relentless. Sidewalks shimmered with heat mirages, and the air buzzed with the dull roar of traffic and murmuring crowds. Amidst the chaos of a bustling city, Rachel Bennett sat on a bench in Back Bay Park, a small duffel bag at her feet and the weight of the world in her eyes. Her dark hair was matted with sweat, and her once pristine nurse scrubs were wrinkled and stained by days spent sleeping on sidewalks and in hospital waiting rooms. For the third day in a row, she hadn't had a place to sleep. The eviction notice had come swiftly after her hospital contract was abruptly terminated. Fired without warning over a malpractice accusation she swore was fabricated. The patient had died, a man in his 40s with multiple complications. But Rachel knew she had done everything right. The only person who had ever believed her was now gone. Her father, who'd succumbed to cancer a week ago. Now she was alone. At exactly 2:58 p.m., she stood, brushed imaginary dust off her pants, and walked toward the high-rise glass building across the street, Whitmore Global Holdings. She had never seen it up close, only heard her father mention the name years ago. His closest friend back in college had gone on to become one of the wealthiest, most elusive businessmen in Boston, Jonathan Whitmore. Her father's last letter, shakily written from his hospital bed, had said just one thing. "If you're ever lost, go to Jonathan. He owes me more than he'll ever admit." Rachel wasn't expecting much. Maybe a phone call returned, a chance at a reference. But what she found was far from a simple favor. The moment Rachel entered the marble lobby, she felt invisible. The receptionist looked her up and down, lips tightening. "Do you have an appointment?" I'm here to see Mr. Whitmore." "It's personal," she said, voice steadier than she felt. The receptionist began to shake her head, but another voice cut through. "Send her up." It was a man in a tailored navy suit standing behind a column, his expression unreadable. His gaze, however, lingered too long, not on her face, but on the locket she wore. A simple silver locket, the only thing she had left of her father. Rachel rode the elevator in silence, her stomach twisted in knots. The top floor opened to a minimalist office, glass, black stone, and cold metal. And there, standing by the window with a drink in hand, was Jonathan Whitmore. He looked nothing like the man in her father's old photos. His hair had silver at the temples now. His frame was leaner, but his eyes were the same, piercing, guarded. "You're David Bennett's daughter." She nodded. "Rachel." He sipped his drink slowly. "I thought he'd forgotten me." "He didn't," she said, handing over the letter. "He died last week." Jonathan's hand trembled ever so slightly as he unfolded the note. His jaw tightened as he read. Then, without looking at her, he asked, "Do you have anywhere to go?" Rachel blinked. "No." There was a long silence, the kind that stretched just enough to make your chest hurt. "Then you'll stay at my house. My father needs a nurse." Rachel thought it was a cruel joke, but within an hour she was in the back seat of a luxury car heading toward the Whitmore estate on the edge of the Borches. The mansion was breathtaking, more museum than home, with towering windows and antique hallways filled with oil paintings and secrets. She was led to a private wing where an older man, thin and pale, lay in a hospital bed surrounded by medical equipment. Edward Whitmore, Jonathan's father, looked up at her with disdain the moment she stepped in. "Another one. You'll leave like the others," he croaked. "I won't," she replied calmly, adjusting his pillow. "I know how to stay." That night, after making sure Edward had taken his meds, Rachel wandered into the old library. A photo on the shelf caught her attention, dusty and worn. A girl in her 20s with light brown hair and bright eyes. Written on the frame, Emily, 1998 to 2021. Jonathan appeared behind her, voice low. "My daughter." Rachel turned. "She died. Car accident upstate. They never found the body." His voice didn't crack, but something in it didn't fit. Tightly rehearsed, too clean. Rachel had seen grief. This felt different. She didn't know why, but something about the girl in the photo made her feel cold. Rachel went to bed that night with her mind racing. The job, the offer, the photo, the girl. She hadn't told Jonathan one thing. She had seen that face before, 1 year ago in a psychiatric hospital. But the girl had introduced herself as Ella Dawson, and she had whispered something strange to Rachel before being sedated. "Tell my father I know. I know what they did to me." The moment Rachel heard the name Emily Whitmore, something cold twisted in her chest. She had only met the girl once a year ago, but her face had burned itself into Rachel's memory like a brand. Back then, Rachel was working part-time at the Fairfield Recovery Center, discreet, high security, and known for housing patients whose families had powerful names and darker secrets. Ella Dawson, that was the name on the intake chart. Mid-20s, admitted for paranoia and delusional behavior. But Rachel remembered how lucid the girl had seemed when no one else was watching. She'd always glance around before speaking, always whisper. And then one night during rounds, Ella had gripped Rachel's wrist and hissed, "They drugged me to keep me quiet. Tell my father I know what they did." Rachel thought it was just another patient's hallucination. But now, seeing that photo of Emily, resemblance was undeniable. She should have told Jonathan, but something stopped her. Instead, the next morning, Rachel quietly went into Edward Whitmore's room. The old man stared at her with tired eyes. And this time when she gave him his meds, he didn't insult her. He just said, "You look like someone who keeps secrets." Rachel didn't respond. She couldn't because he wasn't wrong. That same day, Rachel wandered the east wing of the estate, a part that felt forgotten. The doors were older, the wood darker. No one else seemed to go there. When she pushed open one of the heavy doors, she stepped into a sunroom long covered in sheets and shadows. Dust floated in the air like memories refusing to settle. There were books piled everywhere. Children's books, journals, sketch pads filled with a girl's drawings, faces, eyes, pages scribbled with words. They lied. It wasn't an accident. He doesn't know, but he will. Rachel's heart thudded. Some of the handwriting matched what she remembered from Ella's intake forms. She took photos on her phone just in case. That night, as rain tapped the windows and wind curled around the corners of the house, Rachel couldn't sleep. Something about Jonathan's calm was too perfect, his grief too packaged. So, she slipped from her room and crept back down to the east wing. But the sunroom was locked now, freshly locked. Someone knew she'd been there. She turned to leave, but a faint sound stopped her. Footsteps, not her own. She ducked behind a cabinet, heart hammering. Down the hallway came Gregory Miles, Jonathan's right-hand man, silent, cautious. He opened the sunroom door with a key, entered, and minutes later emerged holding a small file folder. He looked around, then disappeared back into the shadows. Rachel waited until he was gone, then crept back to her room. The next morning, she searched Gregory's office while he was out. Most of it was clean. Too clean. But behind a false panel in a filing cabinet, she found a single photo. Grainy, printed from a security feed. A girl in a hospital gown walking across a hallway. The timestamp matched the month Rachel had worked at Fairfield. It was Emily, or rather Ella. She was alive or had been. She needed proof. Not for Jonathan, not yet, but for herself. So that night, she took the train into the city and returned to the one place she thought she'd never see again, Fairfield Recovery Center. The facility had changed since she left. Tighter security, different staff, but one of the older nurses, Helen, still remembered her. Over lukewarm coffee in the break room, Rachel asked casually, "Do you remember a patient named Ella Dawson last year?" Paranoid delusions lived in the West Wing. Helen's eyes narrowed. That girl, strange case, quiet, always drawing. Her file disappeared one night, just vanished. Then the next day, she was gone too. Family said they transferred her to Europe, but no records ever followed. "You think something happened to her?" Rachel hesitated. "I don't know, but I think she wasn't crazy. I think she was telling the truth." Helen looked over her shoulder, voice dropping. "Then you need to be careful. People with money, they can erase more than just files." Rachel left with a pit in her stomach. The sky was already turning black when she boarded the train back. The pieces were falling into place, but the picture they made terrified her. Back at the Whitmore estate, she found Jonathan waiting in the living room, a glass of bourbon in his hand. "You went out," he said. "Just needed air." "You went to the city." Rachel paused. "Are you tracking me?" He didn't answer. Just watched her. "My daughter loved to draw," he said suddenly. She always said art told the truth when people wouldn't. She looked at him. "Do you believe she died in that car crash?" His eyes didn't move. "I buried an empty coffin." Rachel's voice dropped. What if she's still alive? For a second, just a second, his face broke. Then she's hiding from something worse than death. Rachel wanted to scream. She's not hiding. She was buried alive in a psych ward because someone wanted her quiet. But she said nothing because if Jonathan didn't know, then someone else close to him was hiding the truth. That night, Rachel received a message on her phone from a block number. Just 6 words, stop asking questions or you're next. She stared at the screen, blood running cold. Then she noticed something even stranger. Her locket, it was gone, and she hadn't taken it off. She was no longer just a nurse with questions. She was a threat, and someone in that mansion had just marked her. What would you do if you uncovered a truth that powerful people would do anything to bury? The next morning, Rachel didn't speak to anyone. Not Jonathan, not the house staff, not even Edward, who watched her with something close to curiosity. Now, she moved through the estate with a calm so unnatural it could only be mistaken for surrender. But inside, her blood was boiling. Someone had taken her locket. Someone had sent that message. And someone in this house wanted her gone. She returned to the East Wing once again, this time with a small flathead screwdriver tucked in her sleeve. The sunroom door was locked. Not surprising, but after a few minutes of careful prying, the latch gave way with a soft click. Rachel slipped inside, her breath tight. She moved toward the cabinet Gregory had accessed the night before. It was empty, scrubbed clean, but dust doesn't lie. Someone had been here recently. She turned to leave and froze. Behind the old upright piano, barely visible through the web of shadows, was a torn sketch pad wedged between the floorboards. She pulled it free, heart thudding. The drawings inside were desperate and chaotic, eyes, faces, screams caught in graphite. In the margins, words scribbled in uneven pencil. Cabin, red door, North Woods. Rachel snapped photos of every page. She didn't have a plan, not really, but fear had stopped being useful. What she needed now was courage and speed. That night, while the estate slept, she packed a small backpack, wrote a letter to Edward Whitmore, and slipped it onto his nightstand. Then, using the spare key she'd seen Jonathan hang by the kitchen door, she took the old Jeep Wrangler and drove out into the dark, mountain-bound roads. The farther she drove, the quieter the world became. No more questions, no more whispers. Just her and the sketch's clue leading her through the winding woods of northern Massachusetts. Finally, around midnight, after nearly giving up, her headlights flickered against a clearing. There it was, a single cabin with a peeling red door. The kind of place stories never end well. Rachel stepped out of the car, each breath fogging in the cold night air. The world was still, eerily still. She approached the cabin, cautiously glancing at the darkened windows, the long dead porch light. She circled the house. That's when she saw it. A sliver of golden light seeping through the gaps between the floorboards. Rachel's pulse spiked. Someone was down there. The front door creaked open with ease. Dust filled the air. The furniture was sparse, covered in mildew and silence. At the back, a half-concealed trapdoor beckoned. She knelt, pried it open, and descended into darkness. The basement was barely more than a cell. Cold concrete walls, rusted metal, and damp rot. And in the center of it all, chained to the wall, was a woman, thin, pale, hair wild. Her eyes opened slowly at the sound of Rachel's steps. Recognition flared. Rachel. Rachel ran to her. Emily? They said you'd disappear, too. Emily whispered, but I kept drawing. I kept hoping someone would see. Rachel's hands flew to the chains. Who did this to you? Emily swallowed hard. Gregory. Frank Donovan. They said I saw too much. I was digging through financial reports. I found offshore accounts, embezzled funds. I told my father I suspected something. But before I could show him, my car crashed and I woke up here. Rachel's voice was shaking. Did Jonathan know? Emily's voice broke. No. I think they convinced him I was dead. Or maybe he wanted to believe it. I don't know which is worse. With a final twist, the lock gave way and Emily collapsed into her arms. But before Rachel could lift her fully, Emily tensed. There's a camera down here, she whispered. They watch me. Rachel glanced up, a red blinking light. Whoever was behind this knew they had company. She helped Emily to her feet. We have to go now. Back at the Jeep, Rachel shoved the door open and helped Emily inside. As soon as she started the engine, a pair of headlights exploded behind them. Someone was waiting. Rachel didn't hesitate. She slammed her foot on the gas, and the Jeep roared down the dirt road, wheels skidding over mud and stone. The chase began. Branches whipped against the windows as Rachel took turn after turn, adrenaline drowning her fear. Emily, barely conscious, gripped the seat. "They'll kill us," she mumbled. "Not today," Rachel said. Just as the road narrowed and hope dimmed, a burst of blue and red lights blazed ahead. Police cars. Rachel skidded to a stop, leapt from the vehicle, and screamed. "Help! She's been kidnapped. She's been held underground." Officers rushed forward, guns drawn. But when they saw Emily, pale, gaunt, barely able to stand, they lowered their weapons. In minutes, it was over. Gregory Miles and Frank Donovan were apprehended near the cabin, trying to destroy evidence. Their plot unraveled quickly. Offshore accounts, forged documents, hospital bribes. It all came to light, but the damage had already been done. 2 weeks later, the courthouse steps were flooded with press. Jonathan Whitmore stood between his daughter and the woman who saved her. Cameras flashed, questions flew like bullets, but the one voice that rose above them all was Emily's. "I was never dead," she said calmly. "I was disappeared, silenced, hidden because I threatened to expose the truth. But someone listened. Someone didn't stop asking questions." Gasps swept through the crowd. Jonathan stepped forward, voice thick. "I trusted the wrong men. I believed the wrong story, and I nearly lost the only family I had left. I owe my daughter's life to Rachel Bennett." Rachel stood in the background, eyes brimming. She wasn't used to being in the spotlight. She wasn't doing it for that. But in that moment, she realized something had shifted. She wasn't invisible anymore. That night, back at the estate, Rachel stood on the balcony, watching the sun melt into the Boston skyline. Emily joined her, wrapped in a blanket, her face still pale, but full of something new. "You could have walked away," Emily said quietly. Rachel glanced over. "I thought about it, but I've been abandoned before. I know what that silence feels like." Emily smiled faintly. "Do you think we'll ever be okay?" Rachel thought for a long moment. "I don't know, but I know this. Truth doesn't stay buried forever. Not if someone's willing to dig." Emily nodded. "You didn't just save me, you reminded me who I was." They stood side by side as the stars emerged overhead. The weight of pain slowly giving way to something that felt almost like peace. For the first time in a long time, they weren't running from the past. They were walking towards something new. What did you think of the ending? Did Rachel do the right thing, risking her life for someone she barely knew? If you believe in second chances and the power of uncovering the truth, comment Muir100 down below. Tell us what country you're watching from. And don't forget to share this story with someone who still believes that light always finds its way through the darkness.